I'm joined today by Matthew Garrett from Microsoft. Nice to see you, Matthew.
Yep, you as well, Francois.
So today we're going to talk about, how to use AI for incident response. And so Matthew's going to start with the Microsoft Azure Monitor tooling as well as the Azure SRE Agent. And then we'll transition to NeuBird. We just launched our new Falcon agent last week. And I'll explain how it supports the not only incident response, but prevention. So very excited to share that with you today. Matthew, take it away.
Thanks so much. My name is Matthew Garrett. I'm a principal solution engineer over at Microsoft working in Azure. And we can't really talk about incident response if we don't talk about observability and data collection first. The key components inside of Azure that we usually talk about in this context is Azure Monitor, but Azure Monitor is a very broad set of observability tools. So it's kind of easy to say, but really hard to explain. I'm going to try and keep it brief because I'm not the star of the show today, but I wanted to talk about some of our capabilities and how they help feed into NeuBird's platform and make observability even better. From Azure Monitor perspective, we look at different layers. We can look at the infrastructure if we're talking about virtual machines or some of our PaaS services. We can also talk about the application layer, depending on the application that you're running, if it's running in app services, if it's running in a containerized platform. All of these things have different components or data pieces that we need to capture, we need to grab so that when we are trying to extract insights from them, we have all of the data ideally in one place. And Azure Monitor can collect both metrics. So if we're talking about performance, CPU utilization, memory, disk, things of that nature, but we can also collect logging. So not just infrastructure, is Azure healthy, is the underlying platform good, but telemetry from inside of the running application too. Traditionally, we'll do this with application insights, and application insights has some instrumentation. Part of it could be auto instrumentation. Auto instrumentation is where you're using a supported language like .NET or Python or many of others that we support out of the box with literally no implementation. And then we also have custom instrumentation. So if you want more data coming out of your application, or you're using a language that doesn't support our auto instrumentation, we can start extracting logs and insights from your applications that will help feed into the rest of the observability stack. So really what I wanted to emphasize here is Azure Monitor is a broad selection of observability tools. It covers almost everything, if not everything we have in the Azure family. And depending on which component you're looking at actually observing, whether it's all down to the network stack, if it's the infrastructure as a service, the virtual machines running some applications, or any of our platform as a service components, usually you'll be monitoring these, or ideally you'll be monitoring these with something in the Azure Monitor family. As I kind of mentioned before, and this is just zeroing in on how we get that data from the Azure resources, your subscription, your tenant. These are, you don't really have to do anything. You can simply enable diagnostic logging on any of these. If you're in the Azure portal and you're looking at them, you can just enable logs. You can say, send to my log analytics workspace, which does a lot of the heavy lifting. Log analytics workspace takes care of all of this data at ingestion time. So it'll parse it, put it all in table format, make it easy to search through using our Custo query language. We also have infrastructure agents. So when I'm running virtual machine or infrastructure as a service, there's two components. I've got the actual virtual machine that is run and managed by Azure, and we can do zero touch instrumentation on those. But at the OS layer, the layer that you as a customer are responsible for, you might also have additional insights that you want to extract from that, which we can do using our Azure Monitor agent. And in the application stack, I kind of mentioned this before, auto instrumentation doesn't require anything special. It'll just pull out some of those insights if you're using one of the supported language. We do have a full application insights SDK if you want above and beyond what auto instrumentation provides, or if you're using one of the languages that doesn't have auto instrumentation. And I would be remiss if I didn't talk about bigger than Azure, right? It's great that we're talking about Azure, but most, if not all, customers I work with are not just in Azure, as much as I would love that working with them. The reality is customers are spread across multiple locations, could be multiple cloud providers. They could also have an on-premises footprint in a data center or a co-location. And this is where Azure Arc can help. Again, not going to unpack the big bucket here, but Azure Arc is a way of bringing resources, both infrastructure as a service like virtual machines or even Kubernetes clusters that are living outside of Azure anywhere. Pick a spot, Google, AWS, you name it, and projecting them into Azure. And when you do that, you can then use the same logging and observability instrumentation that you would be using if they were natively in Azure. So not only can we monitor things that are running in Azure, our actual Azure platform itself, infrastructure as a service, and applications running on top of them, but we can have that same extensibility into other cloud providers and on premises. So with that, I think that's enough slides. I want to get into some technical demos. I'm a pretty hands-on person myself. And I want to share with you, I built a light application because I think this is the best way to show the observability stack. This application is a Contoso gadget. So let's say I want to do a little bit of ordering. I've got some cool things that I could order. Maybe, my wife has been asking me for the UltraFit smartwatch for a long time. So I'll make sure I pick up one of those. And I like to travel a lot for work, so I might want to get a turbocharged power bank. So far, this is great. And this is what my customers are seeing and they're interacting with every day. But maybe I want to purchase something like the Quantum Display Pro, and maybe my payment gateway or something on the back end is having an issue. So here, this is my customers are seeing this. They're starting to have a negative experience. And I want to be able to react to that fast, because sometimes customers aren't complaining to you, they're just moving on and going to another platform. Furthermore, my sales teams may want to generate a sales report. They want to see how are my sales doing and get some metrics so that they can talk about how big their bonuses are going to be. Well, you can see that when I click on the sales report, it's querying a SQL database and it's conglomerating all of that data. But that took a really long time. So we might want to also look into what's going on with that sales report when we do our investigation. So flipping over here, this is Azure Monitor. As you can see, again, we have a plethora of different settings and things we can look here. Not going to boil the ocean on this. I just wanted to show you that Azure Monitor is the one-stop shop for all of your observability needs. We can drive into metrics. We have alerting. We have change analysis if you want to actually see what's going on and what's changed day to day in Azure. But I want to focus mostly on log analytics and application insights today because we were looking at an example application, and let's see how we can actually troubleshoot that. So if we go to application insights, this is tied to my app service that's running. I have an app service that's running in Azure, and it's running my .NET code that powers my Contoso gadgets. And you can see here, I can already see some things that are interesting on the overview page, like some failed requests, and my availability is looking pretty good. That's the opposite. 0% means no downtime. But I want to start diving in because maybe as someone who is new to the platform, I don't really know all the things that this application talks to. I have different people on my team. I have coding engineers. I have DBAs, but I want to kind of know what all of this touches. Application Insights can actually see all of the things that your application is reaching out to. So on the back end, I can be reaching out to a SQL database, as you can see here. I also have a dependency on other external APIs. And furthermore, at a glance, I can quickly see which of these are the problem. It looks like my SQL database is definitely having some issues. And also my calls out to my backend APIs might need a quick looking at as well. So how do we dive into that a little bit more? How do we take it to the next level and see who do we need to engage here? Which one of my colleagues or friends should actually get involved? So let's take a look at failures. Failures might be the first one where I can start looking into what's going on. And you can see here that a post, one of my calls to purchase an item, is having a bunch of failures. I have a sneaking suspicion that's that quantum monitor that I was trying to get, but we can take a look here and we can drill into samples because the auto instrumentation will actually take some samples when it sees failures, and I can see there's a bunch of recurring samples of this happening, which is bad. So definitely my customers are getting a little upset. But I can start by drilling into one of these and start looking down my actual code, my call stack, and see what is happening here. So you can quickly see there's an HTTP request exception. I can see the full call stack, and I can actually filter this out by just my code to get rid of some of the noisy dependencies. And quite quickly, I could have something actionable that I can either start an incident or I can pass this off to one of my engineers and say, hey, we're starting to see a pattern of failures in our application. Can we look at this? And here is exactly where to go and start looking. It's very powerful. This is before it was just sound the alarms and get everybody on the phone, but now we give people a place to start, and this brings our resolution time way down. Furthermore, we also noticed when we were running our sales report, we were seeing that was taking a long time. So if we head over into performance, this is where we can start looking at what's misbehaving, what's taking a long time. If we see our chart here, we can see way over here, there's some things that are taking, 12 seconds, 30 seconds. Let's take a look and kind of zoom in on those a little bit and see what's going on. Furthermore, you can see these are in the 99th percentile. So if I click on this, I can see here is my get. This is where I'm pulling that sales report, and I can see it is taking a long time, 12 seconds. Nobody got time for that. I would probably give up before it finished. But with application insights, I can quickly drill in. Again, I have sample calls that I can look at. This is happening quite often. And if I pick one of these sample calls, I can quickly drill in and see the full stack of what's happening during that transaction where it's reaching to the SQL backend. I'm assuming somebody has a SQL query that they made to garner that data and actually bring it back. And we can find out pretty quickly what is misbehaving if we look at that. So here, if we go and we see the traces and events, I can see, yep, here, sure enough, there's a trace. Here is the database command, and you can see it was returned in just over 12 seconds. So these are yet another example of where I can go to either my engineers and say, hey, you might want to look at this database command. It might not be formulated the right way, or there might be something going on between the time that that data comes back and the time that it is returned to the application that is causing a severe delay and is making a very poor experience for our customers. So hopefully you can see that application insights, and by the way, all of this data on the back end is log analytics. Whenever things are happening, it all revolves around log analytics data, application insights right there, diagnostic logs right there. It's all powering, it's kind of the heart, if you may, of our observability stories, our log analytics platform. So before we end this, I wanted to show one other cool thing about application insights, and that is our live metrics. So often something's happening and you really want to catch it and you're going back and looking in time, but wouldn't it be great if you could see things happening in real time? Because the reality of the situation is log analytics, it has ingestion, there's some delay, 3 to 5 minutes, depends on how busy things are. But what I'm looking at is data that's minutes old, and that could be hundreds or thousands or millions of dollars, depending on the industry that you're working in and the criticality of your application. But here I can actually have live metrics. So when I go into my same application that I had before, and I start ordering things just like I was, and I can trigger the same error or the same behavior that caused an error before, I should be able to very quickly see these reflected in my live incoming request. And sure enough, immediately there's my failed request right before my very eyes, and I can start quickly diving into things with real-time data that's delayed seconds, not minutes. Now, I want to show you if we actually go into the logs itself. So that was application insights, and it has a lot of great wrappers around it and a lot of kind of UI work to help make my life easier. But I may want to actually dig into the data points and see some of that raw data myself for a couple reasons. Maybe I want to just look at the raw numbers because I don't trust charts, or I'm better with numbers. I know a lot of people like that. Or maybe I want to get the raw values because I'm going to pipe them into like an Azure workbook or a logging or monitoring solution of my own making. So the UI is great, but I actually need the values. And so this is where our Kusto query language, KQL, comes in. And so in this same application insights instance, if I go to logs, I can run Kusto queries. And so there's a whole there's a whole lot of information and documentation around formulating those. So I'm not going to try and teach KQL 101 today, but just showing a couple of common examples. Like this one is the overall health of my application. So grabbing the total request, the failed request, the average duration, the P95s, and being able to kind of see that at a glance. This is something I could easily feed into an overview type dashboard if I've got a solution that I have that I use internally. And I can feed these and I can do this KQL query on a regular basis and update that dashboard every minute, 30 seconds, whatever you want. If I want to just focus on those failures that we were seeing, in this case, in the last 24 hours, there's 7 of them. Maybe that's great, maybe that's not. But in a real life application, this is where you could remove all of that noise and just focus only on the failures that you're seeing. And we can start to get an idea of how many failures are we seeing and how often are we seeing them. So 7 in the last 24 hours. For my Contoso gadgets, probably not a big deal, but this is very powerful in actual production applications. That SQL slowness that we were talking about here, again, very quickly looking at the dependencies of my application. So one of my dependencies is SQL, and you can see here lots of long duration SQL calls that are happening and their timestamps. So this is another one where I can quickly say, hey, do I have any of my dependencies that are taking a long time to come back? And if so, which are they, so that I can, again, focus on them, and this would direct me at SQL very quickly. One other last fun thing about this is you can actually generate charts inside KQL. So you can see here, if we're looking at all of our exceptions and we can generate a time chart, there's different types of charts you can generate, pie charts, bar charts, things like that. So again, this is really fun. And this kind of goes into our workbooks, which falls under Azure Monitor, where I can put together commonly used Kusto queries that I want, and I can also add drop-down filters for different subscriptions and different resources. And I can quickly render either tables or matrices or charts with all of the data that is important to my team. So I have a lot of customers that they kind of have their SRE workbook, where if something's happening, they can quickly go in, select the resources, and all the relevant data is instantly pulled up. And very quickly, I can go over it with my eyeballs, and I can see, hopefully, what's going on and get closer to that root cause as fast as humanly possible. Now, we've done a lot of digging, and I've done a lot of clicking, and my finger is about to fall off. But maybe there's a way to do this a little bit faster. Well, as Francois mentioned, we're in the advent of AI, and there are things and tools that we can use to make our lives easier. And instead of me reading all this information, I can have something else, ideally an AI agent or an LLM or something like that, parse this plethora of data that I have and help deliver me insights quickly instead of me trying to parse all of that because I haven't had enough coffee this morning and I need a little pick-me-up. So the Azure SRE Agent, if you haven't seen this, is a new offering, and it's very powerful. It starts out, and I can give it information about what resources I want it to monitor. So I could create an SRE agent for a single application and make it focused on that. I can upload knowledge sources, so I can give it detail about that application, its structure, its dependencies. Who are the responsible owners of that application from a database and SRE perspective? I can also point it at a code base if I had it in GitHub or something like that. So it knows the code that's actually running and correlates that with maybe things that it's finding inside my application. I can also give it knowledge files about my organization. Furthermore, when I interact with this, it will learn more over time. So it can look at its historical memory that it's found after it does its searches. It'll make notes. And it can also look at historical conversations that I've had with it for context for new ones. So let's see, I've got one here. So I want to see the slowest dependency. So we already know from looking at the chart, hopefully it's SQL that it comes up with. But I want to ask, what are my slowest dependencies in the last hour? What are things that are causing some slowness just because my application is relying on them to provide some insight? Again, that could be external APIs, it could be databases, not just SQL. You could have Postgres, you could have Cosmos, you could have something else. And so this will go and it knows about my application because I've given it an overview. I've uploaded a knowledge source about my application. And so here you can see it did quickly identify it has some external API calls that it did have some slowness on. And we saw that when we were looking at the application map. And then, of course, my SQL database. So very quickly, I didn't have to click on anything. I didn't have to wonder. I didn't have to call Jeff in. I just asked my SRE agent, and quickly it got to the bottom of this and gave me timestamps. And now I can start bringing in the appropriate people very quickly. I also have some historical conversations that I brought up because I asked about throwing errors. And so similarly, and again, I just in the essence of time, just kind of show you this historical one. So it talks about the different exceptions that it's seeing and the different components. And so this could be where not only am I looking at that slowness I was seeing when running the sales report, but going back to how we were tracing that fault when I kept trying to order my quantum monitor and getting into that, and it gives me some possible troubleshooting incident capabilities as well. So the last thing I want to mention is that the Azure SRE agent is highly extensible. This is one of the beauties of it, is that we have a lot of data sources and a lot of extensible partners that we work with that can bring and enrich this data and make your life even easier. One of those is a strategic partner and a Microsoft investment, which is NeuBird. And it just so happens, Francois was kind enough to kick us off and have me here today. So Francois, I'd love to turn this over to you to hear more about the NeuBird solutions and how we can take this all the way to level 11.
Thank you. Thank you, Matthew. It's a great presentation. I'm going to start sharing and walk you through very high level the NeuBird solution. So you saw on the screen, Hawkeye was the first name of our Starbird, the first version of the agent. We just launched last week at HumanX a new version, more powerful than ever, that we're naming Falcon. So NeuBird is the name of the product, and the versions are Hawkeye and now Falcon. And with Falcon, we are launching incredible new features that serve the broader production audience. Anybody that's responsible for operating your production environments can use NeuBird now to help them with preventing issues from happening in the first place, resolving the issues that do occur because we cannot prevent all of them, and then optimizing your environment for cost, performance, etc. Observability is one of them, right? Because as Matthew showed you, there's tremendous capabilities that is available with Microsoft's Azure Monitor, but you have to make sure you're leveraging the right capabilities so we can actually help you detect things that are missing from your implementation and get the most out of your Azure Monitor capabilities. The problem that we're addressing, it's a very well-known problem, right? We've been trying to solve these problems for years, and Azure Monitor gives you a great platform to get, a much better handle over your production environment. But the fundamental problem is that it's a tremendously complex environment more and more. You have multiple clouds, you have on-premise, you have orchestrators like Kubernetes that in and of themselves require a lot of expertise. Everything is dynamic. You've got microservices. This results in a lot of data, a lot of incidents, probably too many alerts, and you end up being very reactive to incidents that are very costly. And so these are kind of average run-of-the-mill numbers. It can get much bigger. And these are kind of numbers that we got from this Atlassian incident management research. And the problem is not getting better. It's getting worse because now your developers have AI to build even more applications. So the first version of our product, Hawkeye, was really trying to help people be better at reacting, right? React faster, use the information to lower the MTTR. But with the capabilities that emerged when we started working with our Falcon AI version, which makes really good use of the most advanced LLM capabilities for reasoning and agentic workflows, we really saw a much bigger opportunity. So, the point is, MTTR is great, but we've all squeezed a lot out of that fruit, if you will. And we're really thinking, and our customers are responding extremely well to this, is that it's much better to prevent an incident than to be fast at resolving them. And most the customers that I want talk to, one of their top problems is, you hear them say things like, alert fatigue, reactive firefighting, they have war rooms, it's constantly kind of taking them out of their productive day into this reactive mode. And by, being faster at MTTR because it's still valuable, but then saving, some of their bandwidth for proactive work, it can really change the game. Okay, so
Yeah.
that's basically
Francois,
where
real
we're
quick,
headed.
it's funny. We used to talk about it as mean time to innocence. How fast
Yeah,
can I prove it's not my problem so I can go back to what I was doing? So interesting.
yeah. It's actually a feature that we have. It's you can give your NeuBird agent you can customize it for your team. So if you're a storage team, you can tell it, hey, focus on exculpating me as quickly as possible. Give me the evidence that shows that storage is not the issue because everybody blames storage or network, right?
Oh,
And
yes.
so you can have specialized agents. Yes, you can give them, your own little slant or objective. Um, So three things that we're going to deliver on, right? And the first is prevention, right? So I'll show you in the demo what that looks like, but it's basically leveraging reasoning capabilities of LLMs in order to look at trends and historic data. I was thinking as you were walking through the metrics and logs and there's so many layers happening at the same time that the person doing the navigation has to hold in their mind so many things, right? And the agents are tremendously good at taking in a lot of data points, a lot of knowledge and context, and then making use of that to do preventative work, predictive. So you'll see things like, assessing risk of a new deployment, things of that nature. It can look at a lot more data. Now, I'll also explain how it's really important to feed the right context to the agent because there's limits to that ability to take in context. Resolution is, again, we still need to react very quickly, but we want to automate it, right? We want to automate the triage, noise reduction, handle as many of the alerts as possible in an automated fashion, and then provide quick remediation and then deep analysis that helps you with, you know, basically resolving the issue once and for all. And then the optimization is something that it's a kind of a side benefit of being able to have so much production context as you can tell where the cost optimization can come from, as well as performance optimization. So, you saw in the demo that Matthew gave a lot of information about, where the latency is. There's a lot of statistics. Agents can use that information to not only get to performance problems and bottlenecks and help resolve them, but then also look at utilization, look at, how the workloads could be optimized. Quick overview, I'll jump into the demo and I'll get back here, but think of NeuBird as it's a it's one platform that serves multiple form factors. So I'll show you the two main ones today, which is the NeuBird user interface, where you can manage your recurring investigations, your tasks, if you will, your health checks, etc. The NeuBird desktop, where you can actually interactively investigate, and we'll show that. And then there's also other surfaces that I won't have time to show you today. So you can interface with NeuBird through Teams or Slack, and then through a set of MCP client. So the Azure SRE Agent is one such client. It uses the MCP server that we provide it so that it can launch investigations running in NeuBird from there. But you could also use that in your favorite IDE or coding assistant, right? So Claude Code, Cursor, GitHub Copilot, etc. These basically speak to our agent, and the agent itself gets access to information through a context enrichment layer. So think of it as that context enrichment layer just takes the raw data that you saw in the demo and then enriches it for easy consumption by the LLM, by the agent that's doing the investigation. And each of these pillars around dependency mapping, the metrics, events, logs, and traces, the alert intelligence, and the enterprise knowledge, each of these pillars of information is fed by the raw data from the 50 plus connections that we provide, but is also enriched through their own agents. So for each of these pillars, there are agents that are running offline that are creating metadata to make the process of accessing the right information as part of an investigation very effective, more in terms of cost, performance, and accuracy, so that we can pull back just the right information. This requires a context engine, which is what we build, that, for example, does things like distill knowledge. I don't want to point to my SharePoint and have it index all my documents and then do a semantic search and hope that I find the SOP that's relevant in this particular case. I want to have an agent that's kind of preparing this information, doing the enrichment, and it's much more accurate when pulling back the right information, either for knowledge or trying to find the right metric. So scanning the information offline so that we can do that. And then finally, the platform is extremely extensible. So think of it as, I'm showing multiple things here, so I'll go left to right. The first thing we do is we virtualize your telemetry. So most of our customers have more than one observability platform, right? So you might have Azure Monitor and Amazon CloudWatch and Prometheus, and maybe you're running something on-prem and there's Elasticsearch there. But the application is all connected, even though the telemetry might be spread across multiple tools. And what we do is we normalize this into a SQL interface to the agent. So that allows for correlation across data sources. Then we also have an extensive set of external tools. So we can talk directly to your Kubernetes cluster. We can talk directly to your GitHub repo, your CI/CD tools, your cloud APIs, because the explanation as to why something is happening usually lies in one of those, right? There's a configuration that explains why a pod is running out of memory because there's a pod, memory quota resource. There's a configuration of the node itself. And then those things are deployed through CI/CD. So, there are CI/CD events that you can look at. And then if you're running a GitOps, we can look at the commits to the repo to explain when this started happening and why. And then the knowledge is as extensible as well. So we have a skills library. We also have a skills hub that we just launched called Falcon Club, sorry, that is 100% compatible, as the name suggests, with the Claw Hub OpenClaw skills. So you can bring in any of your favorite skills from other platforms into our agent. And then we have a code execution sandbox. So obviously we have in our own hub a curated set of skills that have been, verified for, prompt injection and all that, right? So that it's safe to use. There are 45,000 skills on Claw Hub. I do not recommend just plugging them into your enterprise environment without due diligence. But we have a way to bring those in a secure fashion with the code execution sandbox. So let's look at the user interface first. So what you're seeing is the high-level kind of views that we provide across the environment. The UI is really for management, and a lot of the users of NeuBird, they're working in their Cloud Code shell or in our 2E experience that I'll show you in a second. But managers a little higher up love this type of view because it shows you very quickly your hotspots across your databases, your API services, etc. You can look at your risk clusters, where your alerts are coming from, and you can very quickly drill into past investigations that were triggered either through an alert or manually or from a task. So tasks are basically those things that you want to run on a schedule. So I might want to do a risk report every morning at 6 a.m., right? And I want to get this as a schedule so that I get a report very punctually every morning on my risks. So let's go look at running one of these kind of skills. Think of these 9 boxes here that you see, right? You have a health check, a cost analysis, investigate. This is for reactive work. This can be triggered automatically from an alert, right? So there's automated investigations. There's a manual investigation that I can run here, or there's scheduled investigation. So these are not very different from each other, but they're skills. And so there's out-of-the-box skills for doing health checks, cost analysis, performance, predicting risk, etc. And then there's a generic skill for investigating whatever incident is occurring at the moment. And then, of course, I can take these out-of-the-box skills, refine them for my own environment. So I can add, custom tools that I want to call as part of a health check, or maybe I want to format the report in a certain way. So let's run one of these. I'm going to run a health check here. And this environment is connected to an Azure subscription. And we're going to see that basically there's a confidence score that's going to increase as we find more and more information. And it's running queries across all available information. And so it's looking at, in this case, I have fire hydrant incident management in this environment. And then it's going to query those. And then now it's starting to query my metrics schemas. And I can go into more detail mode by using Control O. So it's really focusing on my fire hydrant. And now it's going to look at infrastructure health, my Kubernetes pod failures, AKS alerts, etc. The report that you're going to get is basically going to show you the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? What you need to look at, what's of concern, what's running healthy, and what isn't, right? And so full disclosure, I've never even looked at this environment and I'm doing this for the first time. But the format, again, you can customize, but it's showing you some of the top things that you should look at and giving you some of the risk and recommendations. So you have no incidents, which is great. You've got a monitoring stack that's been compromised here. Your Istio system, Prometheus, they're both failing, which is not so great. And we have missing metrics data. So again, as I mentioned, NeuBird can actually help you with running your observability better. So this is an example where it's actually detected some missing metrics, and then it's showing you what's healthy. So this environment is a test environment. There's a lot of different things running here, and it's still showing me now a 72-hour outlook, a connected findings, the causal chain. So it's showing me that there's a node level issue that's impacting a pod. The PV mount is failing here because of the memory pressure or the CSI driver failure that's occurring. So it's showing the causal chain of things that are impacting other things in my environment. So that's one example of running an interactive investigation. So I can go here and also look at actual investigations that were triggered. So you see here, you've got PagerDuty investigations. I can trigger an investigation from here, or I can define rules that tell NeuBird which investigations to run automatically. So let's go look at some past investigations here. There's some that are running, right? So these are tied to ongoing alerts. This is the one I just kicked off here. And it's basically doing the investigation, diagnosing the issues. Let's go look at past one so I can show you the completed investigation. Let's look at some completed one here. And I have a summary here, confidence level 95%. And so this is what a full investigation would look like. You have the timeline of events that's been reconstructed and displayed here on the right. You have the time it took to investigate and resolve, and an estimate of the time saving and the confidence level. And then you have the description of the problem. So here we have a Kafka broker that has a stateful set that was redeployed and is causing some issue. I have a CPU throttling problem here. I've got a Fling consumer timeout. There's no restart strategy that is preventing the recovery. So a lot of detail. And to get to all this information, we had to look at, a lot of the information across the different logs, metrics, traces, configuration information. As you can tell, we're looking at things that are running inside our Kubernetes cluster. We have visibility into like the config maps that are running there, etc. And we're recommending here an increasing of the Kafka CPU limits. So these are settings on the Kubernetes pod. We're long-term saying that we should have a Kafka listener configuration reconciliation with Bootstrap service name to avoid redirect issues. So a lot of in-depth analysis, because we can look at the code, we can look at the Kubernetes cluster, we can look at the metrics, the logs, the traces, we can map it back to deployments, and then we're going to always state our evidence. And here you can see additional details as well. So that's the quick overview. We are excited to share this with the world. It just came out. You can actually try it. We offer a free 14-day trial. You can learn more about our Azure capabilities at neubird.ai/resources/Azure. And we'd love to try this out in your Azure subscription. There are two deployment types. You can actually use our SaaS deployment, which makes it extremely easy to do a trial. And if your security teams are, a part of your life, they might have an opinion on how you want to run this in production. We actually support deploying our solution in your Azure tenant and therefore in your Azure subscription, where you can control the full end-to-end data path, including leveraging your Azure AI Foundry endpoints for this analysis by the LLMs.
It's amazing, Francois. Do you think I can get a discount?
Yes, I'm pretty sure Microsoft is entitled to a discount. They're a great
Yes.
partner and investor. And so, yeah, I'm sure I can arrange something. You
Finally going to
provide
get to the
the,
bottom of what's broken with Contoso gadgets. So this will be great.
yes, exactly. You have your AI endpoints,
There you go.
you can connect to those.
Check. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me, Francois. This has been wonderful. Thanks for letting me share a little bit about the observability story in Azure. And it was really fascinating to see what amazing capabilities NeuBird's bringing to the table as well.
Thank you, Matthew. It's exciting to see what the agents can do when there's quality data, and that's why I'm excited for our customers that use Azure Monitor because it has a lot of great data for us to leverage.
Excellent. Well, I guess that's a wrap. Thanks again. Talk to you later, and we'll see you on the next one.
Thank you, everyone, for attending.
Thanks all.